Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today we'll be continuing from the second chapter of the 29th flash. And this part of the text is on the phrase, Alhamdulillah, all praise be to God. Here, as it says at the very beginning of the second chapter, it says that here there will be 9 points made, talking and explaining the meaning and perhaps advantages, as it says, of belief that lead us to inevitably say, all praise be to God. And so today, inshallah, we will continue from the 6th point, and I'll begin by reading it. It's pretty short anyway, and then inshallah we can try to make sense of it all together. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The 6th point. The light of belief depicts this world and the hereafter as 2 tables displaying numerous varieties of bounties from which a believer benefits through the hand of belief, his inner and external senses, and his subtle spiritual faculties. In the view of misguidance, the sphere from which a living being may benefit diminishes and is restricted to material pleasures, while in the view of belief, it expands to a sphere which embraces the heavens and the earth. Yes, a believer considers the sun to be a lamp hanging in the roof of his house, and the moon to be a nightlight. They thus become bounties for him, and the sphere from which he benefits is broader than the heavens. They thus become bounties for him, and the sphere from which he benefits is broader than the heavens. With the eloquent verses, and he has made subject to you the sun and the moon. This is from Quran chapter 14, verse 33. And he it is who enables you to travel the land and the sea. Again, from the Quran chapter 10, verse 22. With these eloquent verses, the Quran of miraculous exposition alludes to these wonderful bounties and blessings which arise from belief. So again, I guess in this part of the text, the author is drawing our attention to several different ways in which belief illuminates our existence and brings light into our life, but also in somewhat more concrete fashion, this contentment, this sense of security, this joy, right? That belief makes possible a joyful way of living. And this is regardless of whatever we might, experience, that all of our experiences, all of the events that we encounter, whether they elicit frustration or happiness, that they can be transformed through belief into moments of security and moments of peacefulness, if you will. And here in this 6th point, he's drawing our attention to, I guess, these 2 verses and how belief allows us to experience and understand both this world and the hereafter. So let me read from the very beginning again, just at least the first sentence. It says, the light of belief depicts this world and the hereafter as 2 tables displaying numerous varieties of bounties from which a believer benefits through the hand of belief, from which a believer benefits through the hand of belief, his inner and external senses, and his subtle spiritual faculties. So from what I understand from this, and please, anyone is welcome to chime in and help me out as well, is that through belief, I can, I guess one way to understand it is that through belief, through the understanding, the conviction that I have been given existence, I am being given existence, I am being nourished, I am being sustained, both physically and spiritually, that all of my needs, my material needs, my immaterial needs, my needs for food and water, and my need for love and compassion, that all of these will be perfectly met by the one who has given me those needs. That I can experience that through the bounties in this world. It's not a world in which the resources are being depleted and there's not enough for everyone, right? But rather that there are two tables, and that they display, at least the table of this world perhaps, display manifestations that look to eternal resources because they come from an absolute source. They come from a source that that must be the absolute source of mercy and sustenance. And from that framework, I become, in one sense, less greedy, and not just in the sort of material greed, but also less greedy in terms of what I think I ought to experience here and now, or what other people ought to give me, right? Because I know that whatever sampling I may taste right now is just coming from an eternal source. I'll pause for a moment because I see we have a hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you for starting this out. So from the first sentence, the two tables caught my attention. So depicts this world and the hereafter as two tables displaying numerous varieties. And when I compare it to the next sentence where it says, in the view of misguidance, the sphere from which a living being may benefit diminishes and is restricted to a material pleasure. So in reflecting on this, I understood this as saying that the view of belief brings into light the fact that our existence has two aspects. The form and its meaning, the physical sort of qualities of something, and then the meaning that it imparts, which is only seen through the light of only through the light of recognizing ourselves as a conscious being in need of a conscious experience mediated through meaning, through ultimately communicating with the source of that meaning. And so what the view of misguidance does is that it completely cuts out this aspect of our existence, such that our only interaction is with the material. And what I understand this to do in a way, interestingly, is that even though we add another dimension, and it might be two, giving meaning to form, it actually, perhaps this is similar to some of the readings we did before, is some of the mysteries, I guess, that come to light, that even though you add one more dimension to it, if we talk about simply numerically, it opens up numerous, as he says, varieties of bounties. So that one dimension opens up, a limitless sort of option or ways of looking at one's existence. And there's an element of limitlessness, of possibility, of depth. And so suddenly, just by adding one side, you open up to something that is limitless in your experience. So that's how I was reflecting on the first sentence around the two tables. And I have to connect it a little bit to the example of the sun and the moon, and I'll think about it a little bit more. But was just sort of my thoughts on starting out.
Jazakallah khair. Very I think this sentence, especially as you said, is important because what are the practical consequences of something being restricted to its materiality, right? That suddenly all of what it points to is closed off to me. And all of what something points to is its source. And I can see that things point to an eternal and absolute source. And so when I'm restricted to the material only, then I become cut off from an eternity of an eternal happiness. That's what I get. That's what I become cut off from. And I guess that's why it says, in the view of belief, it expands to a sphere which embraces the heavens and the earth, right? But also that, if I am not able to engage with the qualities, with the mercy, for example, that a flower, or today I'll give an example. Today I was walking and the weather is quite nice where I am, even though a little chilly. And there are these birds, like these tiny birds, and they're just chirping and chirping and chirping and chirping. Like if I just say, well, it's the time of the year, and during this time of the year, they are, I don't know, biologically engineered such that they will chirp and communicate with the other birds, then I've closed myself off to experiencing or even reflecting upon that particular relationship I can have with the chirping, how that chirping makes me happy. The fact that I can even have such a connection to begin with, the fact that I can enjoy that chirping, the fact that I can look at those birds and enjoy their cuteness, right? And realize that the one who is able to, who creates such a joyful relationship, joyful connection, is the one that can bring me eternal joy. If I reduce those birds and that chirping to simply materiality, I'm deprived from connecting to this meaning that brings a firm, resolute sense of security in me as a human being.
Yeah, it's kind of like also depriving oneself. So
Yeah.
The fact that if we are only experiencing things from a material dimension, means that we're also handicapping what he says as the spiritual faculties, or whatever that is corresponding to the conscious meaning side of the universe. So we're deprived, but we're depriving ourselves such that our experience of ourselves, of who we are, is equally limited to how we're viewing the creation.
Right. And I think just as you were saying that, I think this sentence here where it says, yes, a believer considers the sun to be a lamp hanging in the roof of his house and the moon to be a nightlight. It's interesting the language that Nursi is using here, that suddenly, and as these verses say, he has made subject to the sun and the moon, that through belief I have this intimate connection with the sun, this intimate connection with the moon, such that, the sun is a lamp in my house, and the house is a place of intimacy, right? A house is a place where I am comfortable, where I am at home, where I am myself, I come to rest, where my personal space is. And the moon is my nightlight. That it's not just a piece of rock and a blazing fire that might destroy me one day, but something very intimately connected with my humanity. That they speak to the home of my human spirit, if you will, right? And like there are countless poems of people who have written about the moon I think everyone has some sort of relationship with the moon, right? And maybe it's because we can look at it directly instead of the sun, which we can only really experience the warmth of or see reflections of. But the moon, we see it, and when it's shining, we can say, "Oh, look how bright it's shining," and it makes us feel things. We can see it as this sort of chandelier of the sky, and also something that makes us ruminate. That there is this very deep personal connection with it. And again, I just want to stress this: the fact that I can have such a intimate relationship with the sun or the moon, right? Like, yeah, I guess I can read the verse, and others can chime in. I can read the verse as saying he is made subject to the sun and the moon. I can read that as, okay, so yes, there's the alterations of day, and the day and the night allow me as a human being to structure my time, and that's a sort of blessing, a generosity in itself. But beyond just like the sort of unfeeling utility of it, if you will, or distanced utility, there's something again very very close at home about the fact that I can become friends with the sun. I can become friends with the moon. That I can have this very active dialogue or relationship with them. And I can say salam to them, right? That they are not dead, distant entities from me, that they speak to me, and I speak to them. But Farah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me know if I should continue to raise my hand, or is it okay if I just sort of
You can
keep
always
it
jump
as a
in.
conversation, like we're all together. You were doing this already, so I apologize for interrupting. Like, what is the I was going to just sort of ask to you to elaborate or share your thoughts on what is the consequence or need or importance, or I guess the um, uh, yeah, the implication of like considering uh, the sun and the moon to be intimate, to have an intimate relationship, let's say, that you very nicely described, using the language of the sun as a lamp in my house brings it closer to me, brings it quite present, and like, let's say, it makes something that is so far away, shared by whatever 7 billion people, also one-on-one direct with me in that connection. So what brought to my mind was also this, sometimes I think we all might have interactions with people who kind of in this new age spirituality also consider the celestial bodies, for example, to have some sort of consciousness, and they describe feelings of these objects and describe having communication with these objects. And I just wanted to open up the topic of, in this context, what is the implication of an intimate relationship to these things in creation?
Well, I'll just jump in, and of
Yeah,
course, you
yeah,
can
yeah.
definitely jump in as well. I think the intimacy of it shows the intimacy that I share with the giver of that moon and that sun, right? That yes, this sun and this moon is shared by everyone, perhaps, but that it is also personally given to me, made for me, made related to me by my Rabb. I guess like by my sustainer, not just the sustainer, but my sustainer. That I can cultivate this very, I mean, I guess there's a difference between, if for lack of better analogy, uh the president, okay, let's say the president, okay, even though, let's say a king, I don't want to talk about presidents, but let's say a king um gave chocolate and put the chocolate in the middle of the room for everyone. Yes, there's a sort of generosity, and it's a room of students. There's a generosity to that, right? Of course, all the children are able to eat the chocolate. But then if the king comes and gives the chocolate to me specifically, then there's this much more direct, intimate feeling and relationship of of that I'm feeling. It shapes and transforms the relationship that I have with the king. Then the king doesn't become distant. And I guess in the reason why I'm, again, just a sort of analogy I thought of up in the moment. Others can chime in if they have better ones, but so I guess like when it's having this intimate relationship with the sun and the moon is in fact having an intimate relationship with the one who is bestowing it to me, with the one who is creating that. They become these like beautiful love letters to me from my creator. It's still beautiful if it's a love letter to all of humanity, but when I see that it's also individually addressed to me, that gains this further dimension to it, I guess. And both of you can jump in. HBza Farah.
HBza, you should go.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like to the analogy, I know you shared it on the spot with the king and the chocolate. Some kids may say, well, this other kid, he runs faster than I, and he got 2 pieces of chocolate, whereas I only got 1 bar, or maybe I got none. And so there could be this question of, well, he might be more suitable or whatever, for whatever reason, somebody got more of something. So when I look at these verses, I think the emphasis here, at least as far as I was thinking about it right now, is that he has made subject to me, and it is he who enables so and so for me. The emphasis thereby being that whatever that I benefit from within the universe and all of existence is being subject to me. It's being enabled in such a way where I can benefit from it. And so I can kind of expand and generalize this and go beyond the sun and the moon and the land and the sea, and utilize all of my experiences as coming from a conscious choice that is willing these experiences to be such for me. In which case, whether I get 10 chocolate bars or I get none, I know that it is being consciously catered to whatever my specific situation is. And then I can also conclude that this conscious act must be coming from one who is wise and who is just and who is all-knowing and powerful and merciful, and thereby I can find a sense of security in those experiences, regardless of how much bars of chocolate I get. And thereby, and I think that emphasizes on the point you were making with the intimacy of me and that which I experience, or through whatever the sun or the moon and whatever that it is that I find this relationship that I have within it, because I know that just as the sun is deliberately, must be deliberately placed in existence for me, so must the relationship that I share with the sun as well. And thereby, by generalizing and expanding on this, I don't feel like I'm suspended on a thin rope, navigating through my experiences as a human being, because in a way I'm always grounded. And like, the question you were asking even earlier, like what is at stake, then there's a lot at stake, because it's a matter of life or death, or in my experience, like a matter of, do I experience the pain of non-existence within the lack of security I feel when I benefit maybe from the universe, from like material aspects, but do I, my soul, my humanity doesn't necessarily experience, because I'm still suspended. Go ahead, Farah. I hope I didn't derail the topic too much.
No, thank you. It inspired some thoughts to help answer my own conundrum that I've so the one thing that was coming to mind as I was listening was the example of, like, I'm sure you all also have had these instances where you are sitting at maybe a public lecture or a talk or event, and though that individual, that speaker, is speaking to a crowd, a big room, there are moments in that lecture or talk or usually not academic lectures, but maybe some other sort of like, inspirational type talk, that you feel suddenly very connected to some of those words as if they're speaking directly to you in the way that you have been thinking. And so they really somehow you're like, oh, how you could think like, how does this marvel at the fact that the speaker was able to say something that was exactly fitting your capacity and need at the time. And in thinking about that example, and relating to the idea that the emphasis here that I see is that because of the light of belief, this opportunity of intimacy comes up, right? And so without belief, like, yes, it just seems very sort of unspecial that there is a sun to my personal existence. But it's special that, yeah, the humanity needs a sun, right? The earth needs it to function, and yeah, the plants need it. There's no sort of individuality or unique connection that is being drawn when, according to the author, there's, someone is not possessing the light of belief. So that made me want to think about what is about belief that makes things become so uniquely connected. And one way that I'm thinking about is that because the act of belief, in the way that we talk about it in these circles, is also such a personal effort and endeavor, in conclusion, as we often say, there is an effort being made from your side to reach for that which is unique and specific, and sort of uniquely suited to your observations and understanding of reality. And it is within that desire and effort of matching your reality, which is based on your senses, understanding, your intellect, your feelings, and whatnot, that will make the signs in creation speak specifically to you. So the intimacy is only possible and is possible when that effort is matching your understanding of your reality. And I guess the idea of understanding these things closely increases the more one understands their reality to the best of their ability. So this process is ever, let's say, developing, and the sense of intimacy has the potential to continue to grow based on how best you analyze and understand and situate yourself within yourself and your reality. So yeah, that was it.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you both for contributing and sharing your thoughts and insights. I think it makes the conversation a conversation and all the more richer. I also wanted to, I think these points that the author has listed in the second chapter of the 29th Flash also in one way build on each other. And in the point before this, in the fifth point, he talks about how it's through belief that the sort of bonds of brotherhood take place, right, between things of the past and those of the future, or that that things appear to me as living. And perhaps it's not that they aren't living, but that it's unveiled to me that they are in fact all animate. That the sun and the moon, I share this creaturehood with them. That they are indeed my friends. But again, that all of this is by virtue of the one who is giving existence to all of us, right? Or else it can easily go off onto like I'm brothers and I'm sisters with the sun and the moon, and being fixated on the things themselves. But it's the creaturehood of it which looks to the creator that brings it the connection and the relationship that I can share with them. And through this, because I can, through belief, understand that they are in many ways living and that I share a bond with them, then, I don't live my life with this fear of, will my world explode, or will, if not the moon, some other rock come and destroy my world, right? There's again that sense of security, and that perhaps is in a very bodily sense, but also that again, I'm being taken care of, and that whoever is directing and creating the sun and moon for me is also the one who is creating me and taking care of me. I become aware of the disposer of all affairs, I really like that, disposer of all affairs. I think we had studied that in maybe 33 windows or names. Any other ideas, thoughts, questions, comments from people? Brother Adam, please go ahead.
I jumped in a little late. I hope I'm getting the full picture, but if I'm not, you can all tell me and help me. If I understand correctly, these flashes and the rays and some of the later books go into more experiential aspects of the similar topics that come up in the first book, second book. So is there something to be said about, of course, experiencing this and putting it, as the author does, with the examples of the sun and the moon? So I think one of the things human beings struggle with the most in this world is how do you, like was already said, how do you live in this world while feeling at ease, feeling relaxed about the circumstances you're in, not in a place where there's always tension and always competition or something like this, or you're always on edge. This kind of comfortable and also meaningful experiences constantly, and also integrating that into your actual life somehow is I think what we're all trying to do. I mean, I think about as I'm getting older, I'm seeing my many experiences, and I'm finding frictions in many of the way in which things are going on. For example, in work, in health, and other issues. Not health, sorry, in work and other relationships people have. There's always a kind of friction going on, right? Especially if you're not coming from this point of view. And in particular, at the highest level, like the sun and the moon, one is to also think about, what is my relationship like at this highest level? I mean, nobody ever talks about your relationship with the sun or the moon. Quran does, which is interesting. But it as though trying to give us the idea that the things here become comfortable for you, become familiar to you. There's not a tension between you and that thing. It's not competition. It's not challenging. It's a mutually meaningful and experiential thing. I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say exactly. Excuse me. But I think this is one of the biggest challenges man has in his life, is how to feel comfortable, at ease, and in a sustained experience with all the things around him, where he can live at the most meaningful level without experiencing friction and pain, and not just a pain of loss, but also it's the pain of loss, but pain of loss even in the individual moments of experiencing it, or the tension of knowing that you're not doing something right with it, or that this is just going to be temporary, yes, but also I'm not really gelling with what this other thing is for and what this thing is for me. and I notice this a lot in work experiences. People are using each other's relationships and experiences to just get their immediate benefit, and the relationship immediately turns into a very frictionful experience. Now, if there's no belief, I would think that one, and I sense that from my own life. If you don't have belief, you're also living in this kind of friction with everything around you. The sun and the moon. It's interesting. Someone can live in a state where they're even at a kind of putting the sun and the moon covered up in their minds and like leave it in oblivion, or they think about it, but only in a kind of frictionful way. Like, I don't know, maybe in the summer, it's a pain, or, they don't see the meaningful side, as we've been discussing. So what I'm saying is, there's something to be said about trying to find a really easy, relaxed state where you know that you're fulfilling your own meaningful experience, and you also fulfill the purpose of the things around you. I think belief gives us this. I'm seeing in numerous occasions, without belief, things are getting messed up, and relationships are getting messed up, and things are being misused, and there's tension everywhere. I hope this makes a little bit of sense.
Jazakallah khair. Would you like to add something, Brother Adam? Or is that an old hand? Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to put it down.
No. Yeah, thank you so much for that comment. And it captured my attention, the phrase that you used, that, living with friction, right? And I think we can see that in our environments, and I definitely see it in myself as well. Like, there are many times when I live in friction with things. And that might be from, the examples that you had given. If it's raining and muddy, I can moan and groan about the rain and the mud. And if it's sunny, then I moan and groan about the heat. And other things as well. These might be in my relationships. These might be in whether work or family or otherwise. How do I seek this sort of state of contentment that I know I ardently want, but I always seem to, again, be in friction with? And I guess, here in these points about the lights of belief and ultimately these belief, the state of belief that brings us to say all praise be to God, right? That I'm not going to, if I reach that state of belief, suddenly never get upset or never get angry, right? It's the dynamics of my syllabus in this existence will include a range of emotions and will include a range of situations, some of which will really frustrate me, and some of which will make me so happy, and some of which might despair, right? But again, that through belief, through this branch of belief, if you will, that those moments, those times of friction can be transformed into very peaceful plains or peaceful shores of refuge, that they can take upon a meaning that eases whatever woes I'm carrying in my spirit. And also what you had mentioned about, that in our relationships, sometimes we do look to, and I'm saying, we in general, we look to the utility that we might, or the benefit we might get from an immediate perspective. And it's interesting, the phrase here, it says, when the believer considers the sun and the moon to be a nightlight lamp, they become bounties for him, and the sphere from which he benefits is broader than the heavens. And I was thinking about this phrase, the sphere from which he benefits is broader than the heavens, in relation to that as well, right? That if I pause and try to see beyond the sort of immediate material benefits sometimes, that, if I foster a good relationship with this person, maybe I can have them return the favor to me when this comes up, or, other things like that the meaningful aspect that this relationship will bring, maybe in terms of just connecting me further to my creator, right? That whether it's a it's a quote unquote good or bad relationship, that it will somehow further my understanding of myself. It will somehow further my realization of my purpose in my existence, and the depth of my relationship with the one who is creating this sort of plethora of emotions in me, that the benefit of that is broader than the heavens. And what I understand from that is that that benefit that is broader than the heavens is the benefit of eternal happiness. Because maybe I am meant to continuously experience frustration through this one thing in my life. And I think we all have this. Like, there's always one thing, no one ever has, like, everyone always has points of frustration or points of just like stress or something that they're dealing with. That perhaps that continual frustration that I experience from that thing, it's okay to acknowledge that I'll be frustrated, that the benefit it brings to me still, nevertheless, in reflecting upon that and reflecting upon why this is being created for me, or how rather it acquaints me further with the one who is giving it to me, the educational nourishment it provides for my human spirit, that benefit is broader than the heavens. Because ultimately, it keeps me connected, hopefully continuously connected, to the absolute source of existence, to the absolute source of eternal happiness, to the absolute one who can give me complete fulfillment of my needs. And that's that's what I need. That is my ultimate need as a human being. Others, if you want to jump in, can jump in. I wanted to just look at this verse as well, since we're kind of coming low on time a little bit, but he it is who enables you to travel the land and the sea. I'm thinking about how we can perhaps understand this given all of what we've discussed so far. And if anyone has any thoughts as I think on it that they'd like to share, or potential streams of insight that could open it up for us, they can absolutely go ahead.
I'm understanding, and it's difficult to not just think about it in the obvious terms, but I'm understanding travel the land and the sea as journeying through the signs of creation, or signs in creation, sorry, that enabled us in terms of our faculties, our senses, our human abilities, enabled us in our desire, in our need to understand. It really becomes very easy when we find in our nature to be curious, to be in need of answers. And the land and the sea pointing out to sort of the numerous possibilities, as he has indicated in the second line, that open up to a believer, of different possibilities and bounties, I guess, a meaning of different natures, of different types. So the diversity and the variety that is available for our abilities to consume. So that's how I was thinking.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, that and I guess that goes in perfectly with what we've been talking about. That and maybe the key word here is enables me, right? That I am given the continuous support that is required to traverse the land and the sea of my life, right? The land, which can have rocky terrain, or sometimes just very nice flat lands, and the sea, which can sometimes be cruising, but also tumultuous waves, that I am given all the support and continuous guidance that is needed to safely, peacefully, enjoyingly, with pleasure, travel the land and the sea, and be able to recognize all the sort of signposts on the way, that all of those terrains, all of those waves, that all of them are in fact themselves signs. And in that sense, all of them are mercy. All of them are manifestations of absolute mercy, right? Because anything and absolutely anything that facilitates, takes me on that, pushes me on that path to my Creator, becomes a manifestation of mercy, becomes a manifestation of compassion. And sometimes that's difficult to, I can conclude this, it's difficult to practically apply in my life. I can look at something and say, where is the mercy in this situation? But to recognize that even in that moment when I'm asking, I'm now in a dialogue with my Creator. I'm now in remembrance of my Creator that maybe I would have not been in otherwise. Then that becomes mercy, that becomes compassion for me. Because without that path to Him, then I'm just sort of wandering and I need continuous guidance, right? So thank you. That's a sort of beautiful meaning that opened up for me. Are there any other thoughts or questions that anyone would like to add, perhaps? Okay. So, and I'll just continue for a little bit more, I guess.
I guess,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, one point that I was thinking about was also with the second verse, how I think that enables there also looks to, and as we emphasized, that the relationship between me and the things. So as I conclude and I confirm that my source of existence, the source of my existence, is also the source of existence of the relationship I find myself with this particular experience, and is also the source of existence of that experience itself as well, then again, that becomes a sort of platform for me to feel grounded. Because it's not like I'm just given pieces of a puzzle that may or may not fit, but rather they're all conscious pieces that all fit together, that all come together, and it's not, the ultimate purpose is not meant to cause me pain or suffering, but rather once I utilize them all together and, with the light of belief, connect them to one another in the way that they are in reality, then I kind of quote unquote see the whole picture. I can feel the security, even in the unpreferable, frustrating or saddening experience that I might have. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. I also just briefly, perhaps, I wanted to go back to the first sentence again, because it says, through the light of belief depicts this world and the hereafter as two tables displaying numerous varieties of bounties from which a believer benefits. And so maybe we could talk just a little bit, or if anyone has any sort of comments on how we can further understand how I benefit from the hereafter. What is an example of that? What is a practical example of that, or practical manifestation of that? And perhaps, in one sense, the hereafter here not recommends here indicates the sort of meaning that's opened up for me, right? Because all meaning looks to eternity. All meaning looks to the eternal one. And in that sense, I'm able to benefit from the hereafter, the bounties of the hereafter, through belief, while being situated in this existence, in this world. That's sort of how I'm understanding it right now. But if anyone wants to add and maybe enrich my incomplete understanding, that would be very much appreciated.
I think the first time I read it, I might have read it as like the world and the hereafter, both each having two tables. But now when I read it again, the world and the hereafter are the two tables. So in that sense, describing that your experience has a consequence or an end product. And so it adds to the feeling or the reality of action and consequence or purpose. So in the light of belief, everything gains a purpose in the form of its meaning, which is pointing to its the side of the hereafter. But if I was to, and this is just a thought and would appreciate any correction on it, but in a way, if we do believe in a bodily resurrection in the hereafter, then that continues to also have a different experience, a different reality, but also one that is numerous in its bounties of meaning and let's say, like it can, in a different form, this yearning or this journey continues. But that might be misreading this sentence also.
Thank you. That makes sense to me, Alhamdulillah. So I guess what if we go back to the very beginning of what the 6th point and all these points are about, that all of this, right, that this light of belief, this advantage or benefit or really enrichment of belief, this contentment that belief brings me to declare all praise be to God, right? And saying all praise be to God is both, I guess it's an acknowledgement of the reality of things, that I see the sun and the moon as praising God, that I see them as constantly manifesting the qualities of God, of my source of existence, of my creator, that all of the things of existence become beautiful means through which I see the qualities of my creator, and all of them all together really glorifying it and praising the source of existence, the creator, that I share with them. And perhaps I guess it's through, again, this realization of the nourishment, the sustenance, continuous support and guidance that I receive, that I'm able to say Alhamdulillah, that I'm able to acknowledge the reality of existence, which is that all of existence praises God. And so in saying that, I am just confirming and affirming what is going on. I'm confirming the reality and the truth of my existence, as well as the existence of everything. So it's a declaration of truth, perhaps. But HPSA, please go ahead.
Yeah, just one final thought that I was thinking about after listening to Farah's last comment too was, it could be so that the two tables, one which looks at this or representing or depicting this world, and the other one the hereafter, both represent both the material and meaning aspect of things, as I can't necessarily I think it makes it easier to understand to say this is the material aspect of something, and then it points to looks to something, and that's the meaning aspect of it. But whereas maybe that severance might be a semi like artificial one, whereas that, because it looks to that meaning, the material aspect of it is also meaning. So perhaps I was thinking both tables indicate a sort of meaning and materiality in this world and the hereafter. But without the light of belief, I simply shed light on maybe half, quote unquote, half, or like a very small portion of such a limited portion of the first table depicting this world, where I only benefit and see things for the material beings that they are. Whereas when I look at it as a whole with the light of belief, the material and the meaning coexist or exist together as one, and together look to the table of the hereafter as well. And of course, while I can experience indications of the hereafter in this world, my experience is still limited, I'm still subject to decay and death. Whereas in the hereafter, then that would be necessarily, as at least as far as I can confirm with my experiences here, a continuous different sort of experience of both material and meaning together.
Jazakallah khair. And I guess in a very small summary, short summary, perhaps we can say that without belief, I may experience some very temporary, transient material pleasures, right? But the very nature of their transience makes it such that I own absolutely, it's nothing. I'm left empty-handed. But that through the light of belief, as the text itself says, the benefits, the bounties that I receive are broader than the heavens. They are endless. I am connected to an eternal, absolute source in which I will always be completely fulfilled. My needs will be completely fulfilled. And that leads me to say, in another sense, again, both as a recognition, acknowledgement of reality, but also as a sort of confirmation of my truth. You know, all praise be to God. With that, I think we can end here for today. Jazakumullah khair for everyone, for your presence and your insights, and for your conversation. Thank you. Inshallah, next week, I think we talked quite in depth about the 6th point. Perhaps we can continue from the 7th point. Thank you. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر ودانا والحمد لله